It began as typical Monday morning gossip, a welcome break from the monotony of the cubicles. Jim leaned against the partition with his coffee cup, subtly flexing his bicep in what he thought looked like a natural posture, confidently asserting that the missing temp, Stephen, was a hacker who had infiltrated the company to steal client identities. Julie disagreed, insisting that the hackers hack from home and that he was just a low-level thief looking for prescription meds and was caught. Cindy silenced them both by pointing out the obvious flaw in their theories. Stephen hadn't been caught, and the two stoic men who had just marched into Miranda's office didn't carry themselves like local police. They had the cold, heavy presence of federal agents. Big guns. The kind of major firepower that never mobilized for missing office supplies or stolen pills. They watched in silence as the door to Miranda's office clicked shut and the blinds were drawn. Whatever Stephen had done, it was massive. Here was this guy, hired to pick up the slack, doing menial work, but had no knowledge of what he was doing. Come to find out, the office was hoodwinked, bamboozled, and hornswoggled by a conning, shady shyster that seemed to slip past the man when the jig was up. But what was the jig? And how did he know it was up? Martha popped her head over the cubicle wall, offering her own theory straight from primetime television. Stephen killed his wife and was on the run, living under a stolen name. It was a guess they all seemed ready to accept, right up until the office door opened again. The big guns emerged from the office, leaving Miranda sobbing uncontrollably at her desk. One of them paused to close her door, then turned and walked methodically toward Stephen's empty desk. Jim watched Miranda's breakdown with bitter satisfaction, muttering about how her usual iron facade was entirely fake, viewing her tears as karma for the strict reprimand she handed out over something as trivial as clocking in a single minute late. The big gun at Stephen's desk picked up the computer and walked out. Before the door could even close behind him, two more big guns stepped into the room. The intrusion expanded rapidly. The big guns began clearing out Stephen's remaining office supplies before moving back into Miranda's office to pack away her personal belongings. That was when Peter, the young IT technician, appeared with a pale face. The casual, mocking attitude of the office evaporated when Peter revealed that the entire building's internet connection had been completely severed and the external phone lines were dead. Suddenly, the true weight of the silence hit the room. There were no ringing phones, no clicking of keyboards, and no background chatter. The office was wrapped in a stillness that usually only existed deep in the middle of the night. The absolute quiet extended to the intruders themselves. They had moved through the building without a word, without introducing themselves, and without producing a single badge or warrant. The only person they had spoken to was Miranda, and they had left her broken. Nerves set in. Looking around the quiet room, Jim nervously declared he was taking a sick day to go to the beach, prompting Julie to frantically begin gathering her things to follow him. Jim was calculating. He tracked the movements of the big guns, waiting for the precise second their backs were turned, and slipped out into the hallway just as one of them exited. Julie lacked his timing. Panicking, she made a clumsy break for the door with her arms full of her belongings. A big gun intercepted her instantly, grabbing her arm and dragging her, sobbing, back toward Miranda's office. Peter leaned in closer to the remaining staff, his voice shaking as he explained that HR had asked him to run a background check on Stephen the previous week. He hadn't found a single trace of the man. Driven by curiosity, he had run the search again the previous night from his home computer using highly advanced tracking software and feature identifiers. He discovered that the identity Stephen used was an absolute ghost. It didn't exist. Immediately afterward, his home computer had been remotely hijacked, forcing him to kill the power to his house. Peter looked toward the door, realizing aloud that these men weren't federal agents, and they had never shown a warrant. Jim had escaped just in time, and Peter was determined to follow. At that moment, they all realized that this wasn't proper protocol for authority in the United States of America. They all came to the conclusion that whatever Stephen has done was so bad that it has trickled down to the unknowing and the innocent of a common office where the coffee is free and you could decorate your cubicle any way you like. Some tried to use their cells to call out. Some tried to make a break for the door. All heard Jim in the hallway
Please,
arguing, then pleading,
please.
and after a moment,
No!
being shot. The automatic blinds on the windows closed in unison, and power was lost in the building. The big guns had the situation under control. They were going to find Stephen, no matter what the cost, and make him pay for what he has done.